Hello, hello. Welcome to the free training of how to get your ChatGPT to basically act as your own real estate assistant. I'm not going to do a big long intro of who I am. You probably don't care who I am. You just want to get to the free training. So we're going to hop right into it. We're not going to waste any time. We're just going to hop right into the training. First and foremost, what are we doing here? Well, we're turning your ChatGPT to act as an assistant for you. Now, most likely, if you are watching this training, you've used ChatGPT in some sort of fashion in the past. And basically, what 99% of people are using ChatGPT for is to generate you a response. That's what the G in GPT stands for, generation or generative. So what that means is you're going to ask it a question and it's going to generate you a response. Or you're going to ask it to create you a photo with DALL-E and it's going to generate you a photo. So it's always generating something for you. So instead, what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be showing you how to turn your ChatGPT into an agent rather than a generative model. So an agent is an AI that can actually go and do things for you. So it can go and perform a task for you, not just generate something. So for example, let's say you wanted ChatGPT to generate you a beautiful photo of your city. It generates the photo. Then you can take it a step further and say, great, now go post it to my Instagram. Or maybe you get your ChatGPT to generate a buyer's package or a market update for a neighborhood. And then it generates it, and then you say, awesome, now go email that to this person. And then it's going to send the email for you. So it's super, super useful, super effective. And honestly, nobody really knows about this. I don't know why, because it's a function within ChatGPT that you can do. And it does take a bit of technical knowledge, a little bit of coding normally, although I'm going to show you how you don't need to use any code for this. But yeah, so I guess maybe that's why not a lot of people are using it, because it is a bit more technical. But once you set it up, it's a game changer. I mean, just imagine it. You're in your car, you're driving home from a showing, the showing went beautifully, they want to write an offer. You can turn on ChatGPT voice while you're driving and talk to it and say, send an email to my team and get them to write up an offer for this client for this much money. And then it's going to send that email to your team and the communication is done. Some of the things you're going to want to do are simple, some of them are more technical, but either way, it takes it off of your plate because now all you have to do is text ChatGPT or talk to ChatGPT and it'll do the work for you. So what specifically are we going to learn to get our ChatGPT to do in this training video? I'm going to be showing you 4 specific actions for your ChatGPT. First one is going to be sending emails on your behalf. Second one, posting to social media for you. Third one is accessing your CRM. And the fourth one is updating your calendar. So the first one, sending emails on your behalf. What does that consist of? Well, it means that we're going to be able to get ChatGPT to not only create the subject for us and create the body of the email for us, so essentially create the entire email for us, but we're also going to show it how it can go about finding an email address. So if we don't have the specific email for it, let's say it's a client in our database, we can say to it, send an email to John Smith, and it'll be able to go find John Smith's email. And then, of course, we want to be able to actually send that email off. Not ourselves, but ChatGPT sending it off. Second one, posting to social media for us. I'm going to show you how to get ChatGPT to create the image or the thumbnail for you. Now, obviously, you don't have to do this if you want to post your own photo or whatever it is, but sometimes it's handy. It's also going to create the caption for us or the description, depending on the platform. And then, of course, it's going to post it to the social media directly for us. Now, the third one, access your CRM. This one is really important because this is where it's going to pull a lot of client information from. So if I want to say to it, what is the address of the property that John just wrote an offer on? It can go into my CRM and it can find that. Or if I say send an email to Jennifer Smith, then it can go into my CRM, find Jennifer Smith, find her email, and then now it knows what email it's sending to. So for this one, we're going to need to set it up so it can retrieve data, it can make updates within our CRM, and we have the capability of sending that data somewhere, whether it's to a team member, to our email, wherever it is. And then the last one, updating our calendar. So we're going to be able to get ChatGPT to make a new event in our calendar, create the title for us, gather the date and the time from us, and then add that whole thing to our calendar. Now there are many more actions that you can add within this. If you have specific software tools that you use or a specific use case or functionality in mind, you can do that as well. But these are the 4 that I'm going to show you in this training video. And that'll give you a good starting point of learning how to get this all done so that you can then go out and do some more for yourself. So let's dive into it right now. So as you can see, we are in the ChatGPT screen here. Everything that I'm going to be doing in this training is on the ChatGPT website, not in the desktop app or mobile app or anything like that. We're going to be doing everything on the website. So if you are on mobile right now watching this video, maybe save the video or just kind of write some notes as we go along. But I highly recommend, if you can, switch over to a computer, get to the ChatGPT website and follow along there. I'll also let you know ahead of time that we're going to be using a few other software programs aside from just ChatGPT in this. Now, you might not be familiar with these programs that we're going to be using, and that's okay. If you aren't familiar with it, just keep following along so that you get the general concepts. And at the very end of the video, I'm going to show you a few different solutions to that. If you either don't know how to use those software tools, or maybe you just don't want to have to go through the process of learning it, I'll have some solutions for you as well. So just keep watching through the training just so you can see, what is possible when you set up your ChatGPT like this and just how powerful it can be. It is going to be a little bit longer, but it's an in-depth free training, so I highly recommend that you stay till the end. Grab your coffee if you don't have one already, and let's get started. So we're in the ChatGPT main screen here. Again, we're going to be using ChatGPT Plus, so if you haven't signed up for ChatGPT Plus, go do that super quick. It's like $20 a month, and it is worth it 10 times over. Once you're in your main screen here, you're going to go over to the side where you see Explore GPTs. So we're going to click on that. That's going to take us to the GPT Marketplace. If you don't know what a GPT is, just think of it as like a more niched down, specific version of ChatGPT, right? So ChatGPT is like a GPT that's been trained on all the information on the internet, okay? A GPT in this marketplace, like a Python GPT or Designer GPT, it's just a version of ChatGPT that is trained not on all the information on the internet, but on a specific set of information. So for example, this Write For Me GPT, that one would be trained on copywriting, marketing, how to write good scripts, how to write good, copy for a website, things like that. So it's just a more specific version of a GPT. So within this marketplace, you can also go up to the top here and you can create your own GPT. So this is what we're going to be doing today, because this will allow us to create our own version of ChatGPT that is trained specifically on our business, on our local market stats, on our brand, on our voice, things like that. So we're going to head up to the top right here and we're going to click Create. Now you're going to see this screen that says Configure, and then there's a bunch of things here, and there's also a tab that says Create. We're not going to worry about Create right now because that's where you get ChatGPT to essentially make your GPT for you, which you can do to speed things up a bit. We're going to do the Configure one so that you really understand what's happening behind the scenes. So first things first is our name. So we're going to just call this one Real Estate Assistant Example. Okay, now the profile picture here, you see you can add your own profile picture if you want. You can upload a photo, or you can use DALL-E to generate you one. So DALL-E is going to use the title that you put in here to generate just a random kind of icon that you use as that. So we're just going to click that just to get that going, and let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so generate me a little chat bubble with, looks like a house and a guy in a suit. So that works. Let's use that. If you didn't want it and you wanted something new, you just click it and click Use DALL-E again. Or like I said, you can upload your own photo, your own icon. Underneath that description, you can put whatever you want. I'm just going to put my real estate assistant. It's just for your own internal purposes anyways, because we're not putting this GPT live on the market. So it doesn't really matter what you say. Instructions. So this is where we're going to put all of the instructions and all of the prompts for our ChatGPT to follow. Conversation starters, these are basically like shortcuts that you can create for yourself that'll get your ChatGPT to do things. So for example, if you want to create a shortcut that says post to IG, to Instagram, another one that says send an email, and as you create them, you see you get these little shortcut buttons underneath here, so that when you go into this GPT later, whether it's on your phone or on your computer, then you can just click these buttons and it'll sort of start that process that we're going to instruct within this part here. Now, even though we're building everything inside of ChatGPT's website and on the desktop or laptop version, everything is going to be able to work on mobile or laptops once it's built. So we're going to have access to this GPT on our phone, which is honestly probably the most important part for a real estate agent. So we can do things, while we're on the go, whether we're at a showing, whatever it is. Underneath that, it says knowledge. So this is your knowledge base. So just in case you don't know already, the way that most AI works is it runs off of a knowledge base. This is basically like the data center that it gets all of its information from. Think of it like its brain, essentially. This knowledge base can consist of files, links, pictures, different documents that you have, PDFs, things like that. And basically, it just allows the AI to be able to pull specific information. And it's basically what allows us to make such a powerful assistant for ourselves, because rather than it being, like I said before, trained on all the information that's on Google and on the internet, now it's only trained on the information that we're uploading to its knowledge base, which is going to be the sales stats for your city or for specific areas that you sell in, different processes that you have, your brand information, your company, stuff like that. Underneath that, it says capabilities. So this is just what kind of functions we allow ChatGPT to use. These are functions that it has built into itself. Web search just allows it to also search the web for additional information past your knowledge base. Canvas is a function when you go into it, you can screen will pop up on the side here. You can talk to it while whatever it is that it's generating will be on the right here. We don't really need Canvas for this specific example that we're building, although maybe in your particular use case, you might want the Canvas on there. I recommend, if you haven't used it before, just go into ChatGPT and start playing around with it, and you'll quickly see what it is, what it does. Essentially, it just kind of saves you time. If you're making a bunch of edits and corrections to the thing that ChatGPT is generating for you, the Canvas just saves you time because you don't have to keep scrolling up through the entire chat history. It just keeps the thing that's being generated on the right-hand side and your chat on the left-hand side, so that you can just always see it no matter where you are in the chat. Underneath that is DALL-E image generation. We're going to keep this on because there are some times where we might want to generate an image. Code interpreter and data analysis we are going to turn on because depending on how you input your sales stats and stuff like that, it may need to analyze specific documents or files or spreadsheets that you put in. Underneath that is a button that says create new action. So this is the most important part of the entire thing that we're building here. This is what allows ChatGPT to talk to external third-party tools and to get things done for you. So if we click into that, you're going to see it's going to pop up some stuff that probably looks like gibberish to you if you're not familiar with code, right? So it's called a schema. A schema is where we're going to paste all of our code. Authentication, that just depends on what it is that we're doing. If we, have a specific API that we're trying to tap into that requires authentication, then we might have to use that. You can import some schema if you want. Don't worry about this. We're just going to leave that as is. Now you can go to the Actions GPT, which is basically a chat GPT that builds these custom actions for you. Me personally, I use a slightly different one. It was one created by a guy named Christopher S. Lannon. I found it on, I believe it was his YouTube channel. But I use his. It works really, really well. Just called GPT Actions Schema Creator. So if you go to the GPT Marketplace and you just search for it, you'll find it. But you can use ChatGPT's Actions GPT as well. Both work well. I just always use this one, so I stick with this one. But basically what this is going to allow us to do is we're just going to tell it what kind of action we want to create, and then it's going to create the entire code for us that we're going to paste into here. Now, privacy policy, you're going to want to do if you are collecting specific information about people or giving specific information, like confidential information about people. In this training, I'm not going to go over privacy policy because that's a whole entire other video about, legalities and how you use people's information, stuff like that. I'm sure you went over it a lot also in your real estate course, but we're not going to touch on that right now because what we're looking to do is to build the actual assistant here. So let's go back, and I'm going to show you the one we created already, just so you can see what it looks like. And then that way we're going to create one from scratch ourselves. So if I go back to the GPT store here, if I go up to the top where it says My GPTs, you'll see I created one called Real Estate Assistant. Now I'm going to click Edit just so you can see what that looks like inside of everything. So I just called it Real Estate Assistant, assisting me in my real estate business. I gave it a little bit of prompting. You're an assistant to a real estate agent named Brandon. You help him with day-to-day tasks, blah, 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 blah. It said, here's a list of your specific actions that you can take in order to accomplish the task that you are being asked. So this is important because this GPT needs to know what it's capable of, right? It's not going to know what it's capable of unless you tell it. So I told it, here's a list of your specific actions, and then I told it all the different things that it can do. So you can gather client information from the CRM, and to do that, you have to call this webhook API, and then I said what it will do when they call that webhook. For posting an article directly to LinkedIn, and then this webhook API, and I'm going to go over what these webhook APIs are in just a sec, so don't worry if you're confused. So it's going to call that function, and then again tells it a bit more about what it does when it calls that function, and on and on and on for all the different actions. This is important because if I send a message to this assistant and say, send an email to John Smith, A, it doesn't know, can it send an email? Because normally it can't. And B, it doesn't know how to go about doing that if it can do that, right? So that's why we're telling it, for sending emails on my behalf, call then the specific function. Then I said to accomplish this, you need to collect the following information: the recipient's email, what the email should be about, the subject of it. I also said to get the email, you can go into my CRM, which I put up here. In order to go into my CRM, you got to call this function. So I'm setting out all of these steps and instructions for ChatGPT, or for my custom GPT, so that it knows when I say something to it like send me an email, then it's going to use reasoning in its head and say, okay, I need to send an email. How do I do that? Okay, I have to call that function. But in order to call that function, I need this specific set of information, their email address, their name, subject, all that. Okay, it says here that I need to create the subject myself. I need to go into the CRM to get the email, and it works through the problem on its own, as long as you set out the instructions on how it can accomplish these things. Then underneath that, I just put you're my assistant, so it's important that you accomplish these tasks with as much autonomy as possible. Basically just telling it, look, you have free reign to do what you need to do. You don't need to ask me a million questions. I want you to do these things on your own. I did one for role playing so that I can ask it to role play with me for sales scenarios. I gave it some background information about me as the realtor so that it knows who it's working for. That way, if it's generating an email for me, it might have to mention my name, or it might have to give somebody my email, or whatever it is. Then I put in what its knowledge base contains. So these are things that I uploaded, and that's going to tell ChatGPT exactly what is in here, because it can look at these things and it can come up with an answer on its own, but the answer might not always be 100% correct, right? So we want to tell it exactly what's in its knowledge base so that it knows if it needs to reference it when we ask a question. Conversation starters, I didn't fill anything in here, but you can if you like. It's totally up to you. The way that I'm using mine is I'm acting as if it's like a real assistant that I hired, and I'm just texting it and telling it instructions on what I want it to do. But I mean, you would save yourself a little bit of time if you put in these conversation starters. Totally up to you. These knowledge base files, I don't know why it's just blanking out right now, but basically they're just the PDF documents that my real estate board sends me every month that shows, the updates on pricing and interest rates and all that kind of stuff. I put all that in there, and then I also put in just a plain Google Doc that says information about my company, right? So where I'm based out of, my brokerage name, email address, phone number, city that I cover, and any other surrounding cities that maybe I service, things like that just allows the AI to learn more about your business. Capabilities, I left those 3 on. This one should actually be on as well. And then you can see where my actions are. So I have 4 actions built in. These are the 4 that we're going to cover in this training video, but there's obviously many more that you can do. I am going to be adding ones like calendar management and just a few other handy tools that I want to be able to use on my ChatGPT. But when you click into them, you can see it's just a bunch of code, bunch of script that was written. And I'm going to show you how we go about doing this. Okay, so now we're going to go back and we're going to create our assistant. So again, because the last one erased, let's call it real estate assistant example, just so I don't get mixed up with the one that I actually use. We're going to use DALL-E to generate a photo. Description is going to be real estate assistant. Okay, generating me a photo there. For this example, I don't really care what the photo is, so we'll just stick with that. Now the instructions. So we're going to start off our instructions by telling the GPT who it is. So we're going to say, you are a So we said, you're an expert real estate assistant to a real estate agent named Brandon. You are very skilled at helping Brandon accomplish his day-to-day tasks, such as sending emails for him, posting on his social media, and more. You have saved Brandon a lot of time throughout his week by taking these off of his plate. Now, some of you watching this who haven't done a lot of prompting or prompt engineering would probably look at this and be like, that sounds like a lot of fluff and a lot of stuff that doesn't really make sense why I'm telling a robot this. Like, you save Brandon a lot of time throughout his week. Like, what difference does that make? It makes a lot of difference. There's been many studies around this, around adding additional context into your prompt, even praising your AI, so telling it how good it is, how important they are, that they're an expert, that they're world renowned, things like that. It makes a big difference in its response back to you, because the way that the AI looks at these instructions or that it's at its prompts is almost as if it's putting itself into that mindset of whatever it is that you're describing, right? So if you're super, super generic, it's going to become a super, super generic assistant or writer or whatever it is that you're trying to do. If you're super, super specific, it puts itself into that persona or that mindset of that person, right? So if you tell it you're a world-renowned copywriter who's an expert at social media marketing, it almost becomes that, because then it sources any other additional information it needs to decide, okay, what is a world-renowned copywriter? Okay, it's that. That's what I need to have. Okay, great. Now, underneath that, we're going to be telling the AI what its job is, what its role is. So this is where we're going to say something like, so I said, your job is to assist Brandon in his day-to-day tasks that he asks you to accomplish. I don't know if that grammatically makes sense, but it makes sense to me. You do this by running external actions and tapping into third-party software APIs. The instructions and outlines for all the different tasks that you can accomplish are laid out below. So you have to think of the AI as like an employee. And if you were to tell the employee, let's just say you hired somebody random off the street, you never met them before, you never did an interview, you never did anything like that. They came in your front door and you said, okay, go send me an email and say this. They would be like, okay, I don't know how professional I should be. I don't know where I'm getting the emails from. I don't know where your database is. I don't even know what you do. I don't know that you sell real estate. I don't know anything. Like, the email that that person creates is going to be super, super vague and generic because they're trying to write an email that appeals to a super wide audience because it doesn't know who the audience is, right? It doesn't know what your job is, so it's not going to be specific in the context of the email. So you need to always be thinking about what are some questions that my AI would be asking if it was an employee in order to accomplish the job, in order to understand what it is that I'm asking, in order to understand me and my business, things like that. So, for example, for this, if I were to say your job is to assist Brandon in his day-to-day tasks that he asks you to accomplish, you do this by running external actions and tapping into third-party software APIs. Logically, if a person were to read that, they would think, okay, what APIs am I using? What third-party software am I tapping into? Right? Like, what actions can I even do? You're saying I can do actions, but what actions? Obviously, I can't just do anything I want in the world. So then we give it extra context and we say the instructions and outlines for all these different tasks that you can accomplish are laid out below. And then we're going to put all the different actions that it can accomplish. So real quick, let's go over just a couple different terminologies just so you know what it is that we're talking about as we're building these things. So first off, what is an API? When we say we're tapping into third-party software APIs, what does that mean? Well, an API is essentially like a bridge between us and another software, right? So you might have used a tool like Hootsuite or like Buffer or something that allows you to post to your social media accounts or maybe schedule your social media posts. Well, what they're doing is they built a platform where you can put in your photos and your captions and all that, and then it uses, let's say, the Instagram API to actually post to Instagram for you. When you're using your MLS and you go to book a showing for a property, depending on what state you're in or what province you're in, you might use something like Showing Time that allows you to book a showing on a property. Well, that's a third-party platform. Well, what's happening there is you're clicking the Showing Time button and it's popping up a screen that gives you different times and dates that you can book your showing. And then when you click it, it's accessing Showing Time through that API so it can communicate. Same thing like with Calendly. If you use Calendly for people to book appointments on your calendar, well, that is integrating with your Google Calendar or your Microsoft Calendar or whatever it is. It's using the API to bridge between the two so that when you book something on Calendly, it can then send that data to your Google Calendar or Microsoft or wherever. So think of an API as the bridge or the roadway between two different softwares. So just to give you a better understanding of kind of what an API is and like a general overview of the most important aspects of it, I made this diagram here. So the first and foremost thing that you're going to need when you use an API is the URL or the endpoint. These are the same thing. They're usually called an endpoint if you're looking at like the API documentation, but it's going to look like a URL to the average person. So that's why I put URL there. You can think of this like the address that you need to either send information to or get information from, right? So if I give you a package and I want you to deliver it to somebody, let's just pretend that package holds data. I have to give you an address that I want you to deliver it to, right? Or on the flip side, if I want you to go pick up something from an address, pick up some data from an address, I have to give you the address where I need you to pick it up from. So you can think of it like that. Now within that, there's multiple different kinds of requests that we call them, which means what are you needing to do? The two that we're going to be focusing on and the two most common that you'll use when you use an API are get and post requests. Okay, so easiest way to think about this, get is you're receiving something, you're getting something, you're getting some data, and post is you're sending something, you're sending data. Think of it like post in the mail, right? You're posting out some mail. So you need to have your endpoint, and you need to know whether or not you're sending data or you're receiving data. Headers are the next one. So headers you can think of as almost like a parking pass on your mirror. So headers are information that gets sent with your request that either allow you to access a specific software or a specific account or something like that. So this might be login information, or like your API key so that it knows what specific user is accessing that data, that kind of stuff. Next is parameters. So parameters are basically guidelines for the request. So it might help you filter out information or filter down to receive specific information, or other type of, think of it like guardrails that just help the request go through to be either more clean or reduce the amount of data or time that it takes or whatever. Then there's your body, and the body is going to be where the actual information is stored that you're sending or receiving. So it could be a whole long list of information. It might be just something as simple as an email that you're taking out of a CRM. That's going to go in the body. So the body is just like the main part of where the information sits. Now, the best way to think about this is imagine that you are a truck driver, right? You work for API Trucking, and you have a job to do. Well, when you have a trucking job to do, there's a few things that you need to know, right? You need to know, where am I going? Am I picking something up, or am I delivering something? And what is it exactly that I'm picking up or delivering? Is there any other specifications I need to know, like a weight capacity or anything like that? And am I going to run into any speed bumps that I should know about ahead of time? Like maybe there's a toll booth, or maybe there's, a key card that I need to access the parking lot, or different things like that. So I'm going to zoom out here. Your URL or your endpoint is the address that you are picking up from or delivering to. So you, as the truck driver, are going to be going to 1234 Main Street. Okay, great. But you need to know if it's a GET or a POST request for this specific tutorial. i.e., you need to know if it's a delivery or a pickup. Okay, it's a delivery. Great. Now we need to know our headers, right? We need to know, is there any type of special access or anything like that that we should know of ahead of time? So they give you a highway toll pass. So this allows you to get through the toll booth once you get there. Without that, you wouldn't be able to access this endpoint that you're going to, because you don't have this pass, right? You don't have the credentials to get into that area. So you got a highway toll pass, which is like your headers. Then you need to know your parameters. So you need to know, well, for this particular drive, this route that I'm taking, there's a weight and there's a height capacity. So I have to keep these things in mind when I go pick up or deliver this thing, because there's some parameters in place for this particular job. And then lastly, your body, which is your cargo load, right? So you need to know, what am I delivering for this particular job? What's going to be in the back of my truck that I'm bringing to this endpoint? So you can think of it that way. Your URL or your endpoint is the address that you're driving to. Your GET POST request, that's whether or not you're delivering or you're picking up. Then you have your headers. That's like a highway toll pass, or maybe a key card to access the parking lot of the company you're delivering it to. Then your parameters, something like a weight or height capacity, or some sort of filters that would change the way that you would deliver this message or pick up some data. And then your body, which is what's actually in the box of your truck. What is the data or information or the thing that you're picking up or delivering? So now that we've gone through that, we're going to go back to ChatGPT, and we've put together a little bit of instructions here. We just gave it some context as to who it is and what job it's going to be doing, right? So the next thing that I'm going to do is we want to tell it what kind of actions that it can perform. So now is where we're going to set up each individual action, Now, this is where it starts to get a little bit technical. And like I said before, if you're not a technical person, if you haven't used these programs before, these software tools, you can either keep following along or you can skip ahead a little bit to see what the result is. But I highly recommend that you just keep following along so that you can see sort of what's happening throughout the process. Because like I said, it's really important that you get to the end of this video because I'm going to give you some solutions if you're not technical person or if you haven't used these tools before. I do have solutions for you, so don't worry. So how do these actions work? How do we set them up? Well, we're going to click the actions button and let's look at what we have here. So the authentication, that is what would normally be a header if we put that in. Sometimes we need it, sometimes we don't. With the automation platform that we're going to be using, which I'll show you in a sec here, we normally don't need to use this authentication because the automation platform does the authentication for us. So all we're going to be doing within these created actions is we're going to be doing individual webhooks, and those webhooks are going to lead directly to our automation platform, and the automation platform is where we're going to set up all of the process of what it is that we want it to do, right? So what is a webhook? You can think of a webhook as basically, let's go back to the truck driver analogy. A webhook is a truck driver who is on call 24/7, who will instantly get in their truck and deliver that information or pick up some information. So normally a truck driver only works specific shifts. Maybe he does one load every 4 hours or one load every 8 hours or whatever it is. A webhook truck driver, let's call him, is somebody who will pick up the phone and just do a delivery all the time, no matter what. And he has multiple drivers, so he can do it every second, every 5 minutes. Whenever information needs to get delivered or picked up, it'll be instantaneous. Now, why is that important for this? Because basically what we're doing when we tell ChatGPT, send an email, what we're really telling it to do is trigger that specific webhook. And when they trigger that specific webhook, it then sends information over to our automation platform, which in the case of the email would be the email address, the email subject, and the email body. It's going to send that information over to the automation platform via the webhook, and then the automation platform is then going to take that information and do the rest with it. So the automation platform that I personally use, that I definitely recommend that you use because I think it is way easier to use than like Zapier or something like that. I think it's way more powerful and just much easier to understand, is Make.com. So Make.com is also much cheaper than Zapier and a lot of other programs, but it basically just gives you a visual way to see what's happening with your data. It's really, really easy to use platform. It's very, very cheap as well. Like if we go to the monthly plans, I mean, there's a free plan, but you can also just upgrade to the next one for $10 a month, $10.60 a month. I don't know if this is Canadian pricing. I'm in Canada right now, but it is super cheap and it's much cheaper than Zapier, which is what most people use for their automations. But yeah, this is the platform that I highly recommend. You can just go to make.com and just click up top, get started for free, and you can make an account. I'm going to hop into my account here, and you'll see that I already have some examples. These are the ones that I'm using on my current GPT assistant. So I'm going to hop into them and show you just kind of what's going on, show you an overview of what's happening. So let's go into the email assistant one because we were just talking about that. You can see we got a webhook, we have a Gmail little icon, and then we have a webhook again, right? So a custom webhook, send an email, webhook response. So what the heck are these things? Well, each of these little circles are called modules. Modules are basically what allow you to access different tools, different software programs. These little tabs on the side allow you to add a module where you can look through all the different ones that they have. And there is a million of them, right? If you want to do Microsoft Excel, there's one there. For CRMs, there is, let's see, is there like a follow-up boss? Yeah, there's a follow-up boss module there. So there's a million different modules that you can use depending on what tool you're trying to connect with, things like that. All of these modules are essentially just API requests that Make has set up ahead of time for you just to make your life easier so that you don't have to go in and type the URL, the parameters, the headers, all that kind of stuff. They just do it all ahead of time for you and just make it able to be accessed in just a really easy to understand way. So for example, this Gmail one, all we're doing is we're telling it what account that we're logging in on, and we actually physically log into that through here, who it's from, the email address that the email is to, the subject, the content, etc. If you were to do this as just a plain old API call, you would have to use a bunch of script in order to actually write out the subject is this, the content is this, any attachments, the email address. Like, you would have to write out this entire coding script that would tell the API what it is that you're trying to do, right? So Make.com makes it super easy because they do this stuff ahead of time, just to make your life a whole lot easier. So like this module is for sending an email, and they know what parameters, what headers, all that stuff, what needs to be put in ahead of time, and then all you got to do is just fill in the box. Makes it super easy. So what if you're looking through all these modules and the tool that you want to connect with isn't here in Make.com? Well, then you can go to this HTTP module, scroll down and click Make a Request, and this will allow you to just do a arbitrary API call, right? So if we click into it, you can see we have our URL like we talked about before. This is the destination, our method, so like get or post like we talked about, receiving or delivering, and there are a bunch of other ones, but those two are the ones you're going to use the most. Your headers, your parameters, and your body. So just like we talked about, there's all that information. But where do you get that information from? Well, you have to look at the software's API documentation. So some software companies, I would say most software companies, offer an open API, meaning the API is open for the public to use. You'll most likely still have to sign up for the software and generate what's called an API key or an API token. But yeah, the public can use it on, these automation platforms or by writing computer script or whatever. So how do you find that stuff? Well, usually you can just Google your tool that you're using and then API docs or API documentation after that. So for example, I Googled Sierra Interactive API docs. So let's say I wanted to connect with Sierra CRM. The first link that pops up is the API documentation, and it's basically just a bunch of technical documentation that tells you how to use their API. Now, this is going to seem like a whole different language, a bunch of jargon. If you're not technical, you've never used APIs before. If you have like a developer friend or a computer coder friend or something, they might be able to help you through this. But if not, just tag along for 1 sec so I can just explain what it is that we're doing. On the left side here is some different functionality that Sierra allows you to do within their system using their API. So for example, you can use an API to add a new lead, to update an existing lead, to retrieve lead details, to find leads, so on and so forth. And if you click into whatever you want to do, let's say we want to add a new lead, then it's going to tell you how to do that. So it's going to give you the URL that you have to send the information to, like we talked about. It's going to give you the type of call that you have to make, a post call. And then it's going to give you the parameters that you have to have in place and whether or not those parameters are optional or required. If it's required, it means you have to have this filled in. If it's not required, if it's optional, then you can decide if you want to pass that information through the API or not, right? You don't have to if it's optional, but the required stuff you do. So for example, for adding a lead, you must have the password in place. You must have the person's email. And looks like all the rest are optional. Then from there, you can put in all the details about the person. So accessing APIs just allow you to automate certain processes that you would otherwise do on your own, right? You would normally go into Sierra, add a new lead manually. Instead, you can automate it with platforms like Make.com or Zapier or ChatGPT now by accessing their API. So you can do these things that you would normally be doing on your own. So that's just a quick overview of what an API is, how to use it. For these examples that I'm going to be giving you, we're not doing any custom APIs like that. We're going to be using all Make.com modules. So let's just exit out of that. let's go back here and I'm going to walk you through what we're doing. So first is the webhook. The webhook is an address where that information is going to be sending to. So if ChatGPT creates an email for us, it's going to be sending that email information to the specific webhook. Now, we're not actually going to be using this exact URL for the webhook, and I'm going to show you why in a second. But I'm just going to show you what's happening here. So information gets sent to this webhook. This lightning bolt, all it means is that it's instant. It's instantaneous. As soon as that information is trying to be sent by ChatGPT, it will immediately be received. Whereas you can change this to be every day, days of the week, whatever. You can schedule it if you want, but we don't want to do that. The point of a webhook is that it's instant, so we're going to leave that. So data gets sent to the webhook, then that automatically gets passed on to Gmail. We're using a send an email module here. Now you'll notice this module, the webhook module, is pink, and so is this information that we're putting into Gmail. Why? Because this is the information that's getting passed through this webhook, right? So when you click into a box to fill in something, it's going to show you all the available information, like almost like packages of data that we took from the previous modules, right? So for the email address, we're taking the email, the recipient email. For the subject, we're taking the email subject. Now, why are these called email subject, recipient email, recipient name? Those names and titles are all set by the GPT Actions schema creator that we're going to use in just a sec here. So the names don't really mean much. It's just a way for you to differentiate what information is being held inside of that package. Okay, that's the easiest way to think about it. For the content, we're using email body. So we can decide what information gets passed through here from ChatGPT via the way that this schema is going to be set up. So when we're using this thing, it's going to basically ask us what we want it to do, what specific information needs to be passed through, and then it's going to set the names for us. All that information is going to be sent through into a webhook. Okay, so from there, we put in all of our information in Gmail of what stuff we want to send in the email. You can add attachments if you want. You can CC people, but we're not going to do that right now. We're just going to keep it simple. Then we got the second part here, which is really important. So this is the webhook response, and this is just going to send a signal to ChatGPT, letting them know either yes, the job is completed, or it's going to send back some information, right? So in the case of like the CRM one that we're going to be setting up, ChatGPT is going to be sending information to this webhook, which is going to be the person's name. And then there's going to be an automation that takes the name and searches the CRM. But at the end, we're going to have this webhook response. And that webhook response is going to send us back the user's email. So that now ChatGPT has the email based on the name that it gave it, right? So it's like you're exchanging information. We're sending them their first and last name. It's going to do its thing in the automation. It's sending back the email. If we don't have this here, then this automation has no way of getting information back to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is most likely just going to assume that the job maybe wasn't done because it doesn't know, right? So we have to have this here. Now, we don't always need to send real information back. Sometimes we just need to send back a status code. Now, a status code is basically just a numbered code that tells ChatGPT or tells whatever system it was successful, it was not successful, or there was different errors in place. 99% of the time when you're dealing with any type of API, 200 is the code for a successful API transaction. Now, in something like this, you can change it, but there's just no point. But basically what it means is ChatGPT is going to send information, and when it receives the signal back saying 200, then it knows, great, job is completed, and then it can say to us, I just sent your email, we're good to go. If we did want to send something back, let's say in the CRM scenario, we wanted to send back an email, then we would put it here in the body. But we're not going to do that because this is an email one. Now, there's another piece of information that we need to understand, which is that When you're creating these custom GPTs, I'm going to go back to the one that I use for myself. You can only create one action per webhook domain. Okay, so what I mean by that is when you click on this webhook, when you create this webhook in Make.com, it's going to give you this URL domain, which is the address that you're sending information to, right? Remember, this is the address that we're delivering something to or picking something up from, just like an API address. So this address here, you can see that it starts with hook.us1.make.com. Now, it doesn't matter what is in here. It's just important to note this is what it starts with, hook.us1.make.com. No matter how many webhooks we create in Make.com, it will always start with hook.us1.make.com. Okay? When we put it into ChatGPT as an action, it's going to see hook.us1.make.com, and it's going to say, okay, that's the domain that it's coming from, and it will only allow us to create one action per domain, which means that if we were using just this straight domain address, we would only be able to create one function in ChatGPT. And obviously we don't want to do that. We want to create multiple functions for calendar stuff and email stuff and all this different stuff. So how do we do that? Well, we need to use a program that allows us to almost create an additional webhook with a custom domain on it so that we can then go through that webhook, then send it over to this webhook in Make.com, right? So imagine you're the truck driver, your domain or your URL that you're receiving is an address where there's another truck driver waiting, and you're just going to deliver the stuff to him, and then that truck driver is going to take it to the actual destination, right? So it's like a middleman webhook, if you can think of it that way. Now to do that, we're going to go to Webhook Relay, and you're going to sign up for an account here. You are going to need the basic account at least, because we're going to need to create multiple URLs, and I think the free one only lets you do 2. So for this example, we're going to be creating 4 of them, so you're going to need the basic one. You can just do the starter one right now and only integrate 2 of the things that we're talking about, but I would recommend just doing the basic one. It's $10. So we're going to sign up for that. I'm already signed up, so I'm just going to sign in. And as soon as we're signed in, you can see there's a bunch more information and icons on the left that probably seem super confusing because you don't know what any of this stuff means, and that's okay. Just click on the top one where it says request forwarding, and we're going to click on buckets. Buckets is their terminology essentially for a webhook. So don't worry about all these different terms. Every platform kind of uses something different, but buckets is like their form of a webhook. You can see I created an individual one for all these different things, and we have a few different components of it. So let's click into the email one because that's what we're doing. So we have an input and we have an output. So the input is where the information is going into. The output is where the information is coming out of, right? So this information that's coming from ChatGPT is going into the webhook that we're going to create in Webhook Relay, and it's coming out of the webhook that we created in Make.com, right? So it's just kind of like a little portal. The information from ChatGPT goes into the Webhook Relay webhook and then comes out the Make.com webhook. And the only reason that we need to do this is because every time you create a different webhook in Webhook Relay, it's a random set of letters and numbers. So that way ChatGPT doesn't recognize it as the same domain every time. You can see with all of these, they're all different random letters, just a different combination. It's a bit of a workaround, but that's just what we need to do if we want to have multiple functionalities in one GPT. The other option, if you don't want to do that, is you can create individual GPTs for individual tasks, like an email one, and a CRM one and whatever. But I think that sort of defeats the purpose a little bit. If you're trying to build an assistant, it should be one assistant that can kind of do everything for you. So how do we start doing any of this? How do we get this all set up? Well, let's go back into Make.com and let's get started here. So I'm just going to I'm going to exit out of here. I'm going to create a brand new scenario. Just on the top right, click create new scenario, and you're going to get to this screen, right? So first thing, we're just going to name it. Let's call it email ChatGPT. For mine, I'm just going to add tester. So we got that in there, and then we're just going to click this purple circle here, which allows you to select your module. If you click it and nothing happens, just refresh your screen. Sometimes it's just like a little bug where you're clicking stuff and nothing happens. Just refresh your screen and then go back. Also, if you look down at the toolbar here, there's a bunch of different things. The only thing that I want you to pay attention to is the save button right here and the auto align button right here. So this does not auto save on its own. So just make sure as you're creating these scenarios, as you're adding modules and updating them, you're saving along the way, so that if for some reason your computer crashes, or like I just said, you have to refresh the screen, it's not going to delete all your work. Auto align, I'll just show you what that does in a sec. Just kind of keeps everything neat and tidy. Anyways, we're going to go click in here and we're going to do a webhook. If you don't see it, just type in webhook and click custom webhook. We're going to get to this screen and we need to either choose a hook, which you're not going to have any because you have never created a webhook before. So we're going to click add, and then you're just going to name it whatever you want to name it. I'm going to name mine email example. Don't worry about IP restrictions. That's just if you wanted to restrict specific people to using it or whatever. Don't worry about that. Just type in the name that you want, click save, and it's going to generate us instantly a webhook here. Now you'll see that this little circle's spinning and it says stop. You can stop it if you want. That's because right now it's looking for information. Don't worry about that right now. What we're going to do is just copy address to clipboard. Right? Click that and it's just going to copy this URL here. We're going to go back to my webhook relay and we're going to go back into our buckets, and then we're going to create an empty bucket. Okay? Call it whatever you want. Probably call it just the same thing as you called that webhook, just to make it simple for you. Click create. So it's already created us its own endpoint for its webhook. All we have to do is add an output destination. So I'm just going to put make.com just so I know where it's going. And then you just paste in the URL that you just copied to your clipboard. We're going to make it public and then create. Okay, it's going to take us into this screen, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to click on default public endpoint. Then we're going to click response configuration, and we're going to change this to any output. Okay, so this goes back to the webhook response that we talked about at the end of the sequence that sends data back to ChatGPT. That's what this is. So we're changing this to any output so that way, if it's just like a 200 code that we're sending, no problem. Or if it's actual data that we're sending back, no problem. Whatever the output is that we want to send back, it'll accept anything. So we're just changing that to any output. We're going to scroll down and hit save. And that's it. Now you'll see we have the email example here. With that, what you're going to want to do is go into it, and on the input URL that it created, you're going to want to copy that. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our action schema creator. You might be using the ChatGPT one, no problem. I'm using this one. Totally free to use if you want to go to the GPT store quick and start using it, just so you can follow along exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the one button here, create a GPT action schema, and then it's just going to say if we're ready. I'm going to say yes. It's going to ask us two questions. What is the title of your action schema? And provide a brief description of what your schema does. So I'm saying the title of the action schema is email example, and the brief description of what the schema does. It sends emails on my behalf. Very simple. I'm going to send that. Gotta get some coffee. Keep charged. Great, now it's going to ask a few more questions. What is the server URL where this action schema will be hosted? All that means is the webhook domain. That's it. So we're just going to paste the webhook that we just copied inside of webhook relay. We're going to paste that in. Make sure we just label this as 3 so that it knows that that's the answer to that question. And then 4 is going to be provide a brief description of the server. Again, sounds very technical. It's not. We're just going to say it's a webhook. Very simple. Send that off. Okay, step 3. What is the summary of the action performed by this schema? What should the unique operation ID for this action be? And provide the names and descriptions of 2 parameters required for this action. Okay, so what is the summary of the action performed by the schema? Sending emails on my behalf. Number 6. What should the unique operation ID for this action be? You can see it'll give you an example here. We're just going to use that. Sure, why not? I believe that it has to all be one word anyways, so we're just going to put that in there. All this is used for is basically as a command for ChatGPT so that it can tell it use the send email action and it'll be able to tell which action that is. So it's not super important what you name it, as long as it's clear to you if you ever have to look back on it. Number 7, provide the names and descriptions of 2 parameters required for this action. So the parameter is the information that we need to pass through the webhook. So for sending an email, what do we need? Well, we need the email address, right? We might need the person's name, maybe not. It's up to you. We're going to need the subject of the email, and we're going to need the body of the email, right? That's probably good enough to get started, depending on if you're looking to do a specific kind of email. Maybe you want to do an attachment as well, or you want to CC somebody. But for this, we're just going to do the email address. We're going to do the body of the email and the subject of the email as well. So let's say we're just going to put name is going to be email address. Description will be email address. No, I'm just going to change this to name. Name is email and description is email address of the recipient. Let's do another one. Name. We're going to call it subject, and description will be the subject of the email. Then let's do body. Description is the body of the email. So I'm just going to pass those 3 along. And that's it. So again, it's super, super easy. You just talk to it as if it were a person that you're explaining what you're trying to do, and it'll understand and it'll do the coding on its own. So let's send that. What message should be shown for a successful response? What message should be shown for a failure response? Sometimes it'll ask you this, sometimes it won't. For a successful response, you can honestly just use the examples that they gave you. Or you can use like the codes, like a 200 for a successful and maybe a 400 for not, like whatever works better for you. Now it says, thanks for all the details. I'll generate the GPT Actions schema. and then it's going to generate all this stuff. Now, the one thing I noticed actually with this GPT Actions schema creator, and probably the ChatGPT one wouldn't do this, is it's just one version behind on this Open API thing, but I'll show you how to fix that in a sec. So you want to wait till it fully generates everything, and now you can just copy this code, go back to our ChatGPT assistant that we are creating, which is right here, and we're going to put in an action. All you got to do is just paste all that stuff that you just put in, that you just copied, paste all that in. But you'll notice when you scroll down a little bit, it's going to say input should be 3.1.0. This is what I was talking about before. You just have to change this at the top to 3.1.0, and then you'll see that error is gone. So see, it automatically detects that we called the action send email action. It automatically detects what kind of method it is. And then, yeah, privacy policy, like I said, we're not going to worry about in this video. So we're going to test it now. So to do that, we want to make sure that this webhook here is turned on, or it's running, so that it can receive data that we send into it. So how do we do that? Well, yours might still be running. You might still see that little stop circle running in the red button. If not, and yours looks like this, you can just click redetermine data structure, and then it'll start it up again. So we're going to let that run, and we're going to go back to our GPT. We're going to click test. And then what it's going to do is it's just going to ask us the questions that it needs to. Now, it might ask you some questions beforehand, or it might just ask for permission to start the action. Because we're testing it, it's probably just going to ask permission like this. So we're just going to click allow. Don't worry about what all this stuff means. Okay, it says the email was successfully sent using the API. So now let's go back and look, and you can see it says successfully determined. So perfect. We're going to click OK. Now that we've connected the webhook to ChatGPT, you'll see, if we go back to our buckets here, click on the one that we just made, you can see that there's something that was sent. So this just shows you a record of everything that was sent. So it's sent through here, straight to here, and that's how this received the data. So now we're good to start connecting other things. So for this one example, we're doing the email. So I'm going to connect my Gmail. You can also do Microsoft 365. If you use a different mail provider, like let's say MailChimp, there's that in there. Maybe you use just like generic iMessage. If that's the case, then there is a generic mail module that Makecom makes for you. You just got to set it up in there. But I'm using Gmail, so we're going to do this. And we're going to scroll down to send an email. You can see all the other functions that there are. There's delete an email, there's mark an email as unread, modify, blah, blah, blah. We're going to send an email here. Now I'm already connected. If you weren't connected, what you would do is you would click add, you would name it, and then you would just sign in to your Google account or to your Microsoft account or whatever. Make.com is really good with providing information. If you need to enter a certain thing like an API token or something like that. So a lot of times they will have a little link like learn more or something, which will just provide you on some insight as to, you know, what information you need or how to get it or whatever. If you do have more questions, use ChatGPT. ChatGPT is pretty much the pro at answering all these different questions. I use ChatGPT all the time for Make.com scenarios and stuff just to kind of walk me through different parts of it. It's really good at that. But anyways, I'm already signed in and hooked up, so we're good to go there. Once you are as well, then we can move on to this next part. So the first part of this module is to. So this is the email that we're sending it to. So we're going to click add a recipient. And when you click into this white box here, it's going to pop up this little tab. Now what this is just different things that Make.com allows you to select. These are all just kind of random like formulas. If you think of like Excel, how they have formulas and stuff, it's kind of like that, just preset stuff they have. The only thing that you're going to need to worry about for this example is the star tab, and the star tab shows you any data that's been passed from modules previous to this one. So because in this Gmail module we are only having one before that, which is the webhook, that's the only data that we're going to see is from the webhook, right? And through that webhook we passed the email, the subject, and the body. Great. So for email address, we're going to put the email. So these blocks here have data inside of them. They're not just like what it says. So we're not sending an email to one.email. We're sending an email to whatever one.email represents, which you'll see once we actually do a test run of the ChatGPT function. It'll tell you what the data is in all of these things. But for now, just work with me here. Email address is email, subject is subject, and content is the body of the email. Okay. Attachments, we're not going to do. We're going to click OK. And the last one that we're going to have is the webhook response. Now, you could do further things from here, right? You could send an email. Then you could also add your CRM module, which would update the person's row in your CRM to let them know, or to let your CRM know that you sent an email on this date. You could do whatever you want in here, right? This automation, once it's triggered by this webhook, it's going to run the entire thing. But for this particular example that we're doing, we're just going to do a simple email sending module. So now that we got the email one hooked up, we have to put in a webhook response so that it can send that data back to ChatGPT, right? So we're just going to click this plus button beside the Gmail, go back to webhooks, and you'll see since we already have a webhook in place, the only thing that it allows us to select is a webhook response. Because that's the only, you can't have two webhooks in one scenario. So status is just the code that it's going to tell the computer or ChatGPT or whoever what it is that has happened, whether it's successful or not successful or whatever. So it's going to be a 200 status. You can, again, put it as whatever you want, but I always just leave it as 200. And then in the body, we would pass any information that we wanted to. In this case, we don't need to, because as long as ChatGPT sees that there's a 200 response, it's going to tell us the email was sent, you're good to go. So we're just going to leave it just like that and done. And then at the bottom here, click save. Now I'll show you this auto align button, what it does. Let's just say when you were working with stuff and adding stuff in, it was kind of, all crooked and misaligned, whatever. If you click auto align, it just makes it all nice and pretty and organized. So I like using that. The other one that's kind of cool also is if you click more and you click explain flow, it'll show you how information is getting passed. Right? So let's do that one more time. You see this little dot, it's moving to email, sending an email, moving back to here. Pretty simple to understand when it's 3 of them, but if you have scenarios that are like, I have some that are over 100 different modules and splitting off into routers and different paths and all this stuff, it can get handy just to use that and see. So anyways, that one is all finished. Now we're going to go back here to ChatGPT, and we're going to go back out of here. And now we want to put in some more information in the instructions to tell it when and how to perform that action. Before I do that though, I always like to just make sure that my work is always saved. Now ChatGPT does auto save stuff, but first you need to create it. It does save it as a draft, but I never want to rely on that. So before we do anything else, just to save our work, we're going to go up here to create, and we're just going to click that. You have a few options here. You can make it live to anyone with the link, so you can share this assistant around if you wanted to. You can put it on the GPT store if you want other people to access it. And you can also just click only me, which is what we're going to do because obviously it's our own assistant. So now that we got that saved, we're going to put in some additional instructions so that ChatGPT knows when it should be using the email module and how to use it. So I typed out the instructions for the email already. So here's what we're saying. For sending emails on my behalf, call the, and then I put the webhook there, API with the send email action operation. So what this means is we're saying call this action, which if you scroll down is right here. So you're going to copy and paste that. So call this action with the send email action operation. What is the send email action operation? Well, if you click into your action there, scroll down, you'll see available actions, which is right here. Now you can have more than one action within here, which you would have your action schema creator GPT do for you. But for this, we're just going to be doing the one. But it's labeled as send email action. So when we specify it in the instructions, we're saying call this action and perform the send email action operation. Okay, so then it knows exactly what to do when we want it to send an email on our behalf. Put some further instructions. To accomplish this, you need to collect the following information. Recipient's email. I put, if I do not know the email, then ask me for their first and last name and then search through my CRM for the person's email by calling the, and this is where we're going to fill in once we do the CRM action. Then what the email should be about. Once I tell you what the email is about, it is up to you to create the subject and the body. You can ask me additional questions if you need to. Whether or not you should CC another email, this is not required. Whether or not there are any attachments that go along with it. Once you have all that information, you should show me the body in plain text that you've created so that I can confirm it before you send it. Also, this information is being passed to a Gmail module in Make.com, so you need to write the email in HTML format. What does that mean? What is HTML format? Well, if you go back, I don't know if maybe you remember using Nexopia or like MySpace or one of those old social media channels. In order to customize your profile page back in those days, you had to use HTML tags to change font colors and sizes and all that stuff. If you don't remember what I'm saying, then forget about it. But basically, it's just a form of code to change text and reformat it. So when we use an email module in Make.com, it uses, most of the time, it uses HTML to write the actual body. All this means is that if you don't use HTML, it's just going to write it as one sentence after another, rather than like if you separate it by paragraphs or different lines or whatever. If you want all that to be structured, which you probably do, use HTML. If you don't, it's just going to do one sentence after another, after another, after another as like one big block of text. So we're just telling it to write the whole email in HTML. Again, you don't need to know how to do HTML. ChatGPT will do it for you. But up here, we're saying once you have all that information, you should show me a preview of it. But we're saying it should be in plain text so that when it says, hey, I wrote your email, check it here to approve it, we don't want it to send it to us in a bunch of HTML coding because that would be hard to look over and approve. So we want it to send it to us in plain text to approve in ChatGPT, but then when it sends it over to Make.com, it'll be in HTML. So that is the email one all finished. Let's go back to our Miro board here. We're going to change this to red so we know it's all done. Now we're going to work on our social media post. So we need to be able to create an image, create the caption, and post it. Wonderful. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can do it in a few different ways. LinkedIn, X, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. I'm going to do it in this example on LinkedIn, just so you can see what that looks like. Because what we're going to make is a way to share articles and sort of fill up our LinkedIn page with useful articles about real estate tips or real estate updates, stuff like that. So I'm going to click update here just to be safe, just to keep everything saved so we don't lose any of our work. Then we're going to go back to Make.com. We're going to go back and we're going to create a new scenario. It's the same scenario as before. We're going to create a new webhook. We're going to create, once we go in there, a custom webhook. Make a new one, copy and paste it, create a new bucket on my webhook relay, enter that in, and then use that, make a GPT Action schema creator thing here, get it to create us new script. It's going to be all the exact same process. The only thing that's going to be different is how we set it up in Make.com with the actual scenario in between the webhook. So we're going to fast forward ahead to the scenario so that you can see what we do afterwards. If you have to rewind back in the video and watch again how we created the webhook and how we created a new bucket and connected the two, go ahead and do that and then come back to this part of the video because I'm going to show you the part that's different, which is in between the webhook stuff. Okay, so if you're at this part of the video, you should have created a new scenario on Make.com where we're going to do a LinkedIn post. You should have created a new webhook in Make.com. You should have copied that webhook URL and then created a new bucket in Webhook Relay and set that up with your Make.com webhook that you just created. And then you should have taken that webhook from the Webhook Relay, gone in to the GPT Action schema creator, and created an entirely new schema to post on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever it is you're trying to do. And it should have generated you another schema, which you're going to copy, go back into your GPT, scroll down, create new action, paste it in there, change this to 1.0 if you need to, you might not. And then we're just going to go back. And then, okay, so we got that all set up. In here, you can see we have a second action now. We're going to go back to Make.com and we're going to continue from that webhook, right? So here's what we have for this particular scenario. We have the webhook. Just like before, the webhook is what takes in the data and triggers this whole workflow. So this webhook passes information to this module, which is we're just setting variables here. Why do we do that? This is honestly just more of a habit of mine because it's needed for more technical scenarios. You don't have to use this, but just if you want to follow along with me, all it is when you're searching for a module, when you're adding one, just type tools. You'll see this purple icon for tools, and then you're going to scroll down to set multiple variables. Once you add that in, you'll see this. And basically all you're doing is you're going to name the variable and what it is, right? So the content is going to be the content coming out of here. The URL is going to be the URL coming out of here. The title, so on and so forth. Okay? From there, we're moving to an OpenAI module. Now, what is an OpenAI module? It allows us to speak to ChatGPT. Not to the ChatGPT that we just created. It allows us to speak to generic ChatGPT. In this case, we're going to be using it to generate an image. Okay? Now, you can generate an image inside of your custom GPT, but it gets a little bit more complicated when you want to transfer that image to Make.com. I find it easier to just do it within Make.com. The way that we're going to do that is you're going to add a module onto the end of your tools thing, and then you're just going to search OpenAI. Click that. And then scroll down to generate an image. So it's going to use DALL-E, which is like ChatGPT's image generator, to generate an image. And you just click that. Okay. Now what you need to do is you need to connect your ChatGPT account. Right, so same kind of way, you click add, you're going to put in your API key, which you can find in your ChatGPT or your OpenAI dashboard. This is another reason why you need a ChatGPT Plus. If you don't know how to find it or you can't find it, you can ask ChatGPT and it will give you the link of where you can find it. You just put that in here as well as your organization ID, connect it, and then you're good to go. So once you're connected there, select your model, which is going to be DALL-E 3 because it's the newest version. And then our prompt. All we're going to say is super simple, is generate a thumbnail image for this LinkedIn article. We put the title and we put the URL to the article. Now I was a little bit specific on what kind of image, right? I said thumbnail image for LinkedIn article because then ChatGPT will know what size of image to make. Basically the scenario that I'm thinking here for this automation is, I woke up in the morning, I'm scrolling through my news feed on Facebook or on X or wherever, and I found an interesting article. It was about real estate news or whatever. I would just copy the URL for that, give it to my Custom GPT and say, hey, post this to my LinkedIn and, write some comments about it or whatever. And then it's going to do that. So we got our DALL-E image generator set up here. I'm just going to click OK. Then we have a couple more modules. So we have the HTTP module. This allows us to get this image that it creates because it's going to generate an image and it's going to give it to us as a URL and as coded data, which we can't do anything with unless we use a module like this HTTP module, which is the get a file one. So it's not the API one that I showed you earlier. It's the get a file HTTP module, which once again, all you have to do is just search HTTP, click it up here, and then you can look through all these. It's right here, get a file. So you can see it downloads a file from a given URL. When you click in on it, there's only one box where you put a URL, and I'm going to delete that and then show you how to find the URL here. So if you click on the box, you can see these are all the previous modules that we have before this one, right? But in the OpenAI one here, I don't see anything that says URL. But you see this little black arrow right here? That means that if we click that, there's more data inside of this box, right? You can see there's no black arrows on any of these. I mean, there's that, but that just opens it up. But the same thing goes here. It's just going to open up that to more data. And when you open it up, you can see that we have the URL box. So we're going to click that. It's going to enter it in. Click OK to save it. Next is LinkedIn. So we just searched for a LinkedIn module, and there was one that says create an organization text post. Same thing, you got to connect your LinkedIn account. So it's going to get you to sign into your LinkedIn account. You got to select the organization that is hooked up to your LinkedIn account, or you can just do it to your personal one. You'll see when you search for a LinkedIn module, there's a lot of different ones that you can choose from. And then that's it. We're going to do content, which is the commentary for the post, right? And that's the content variable that we saved. You can mention other people if you want. Then you're going to select your media type. We're doing an article. We're going to do the URL. The title is the title. The description is the description. Very simple. The thumbnail that we're going to use is this get a file one. Now you see you can select the OpenAI image generator thing there. It won't work if you just select it plain and simple like that. So I just do this HTTP module and select that, and then it will know to use the image that's held inside here as the thumbnail. Visibility is public, feed distribution, main feed. Okay, done. Save that. The last thing that we want to add on is a webhook response. Just a 200 response, that's it. Now we're going to save it. We're going to go back to our custom GPT and we're going to add this instruction in, right? Because we already added the action. Now we're going to add the instruction. So underneath the email one, let's add that in. So I put, for posting an article directly to LinkedIn, call the, and then that action that we have down here with the post LinkedIn article operation. To accomplish this, I will give you the URL to an article that you need to write about and generate the following: the content, which is my commentary on the post, the URL, which is the URL to the original article, which I've already given you, the title, our own title for the post, max 400 characters, and description, a brief description of the post. If you wanted to go in depth on these, like, make sure you include these 3 hashtags or whatever, you can. Right? The instructions is literally the instructions you're giving ChatGPT on how it needs to act and perform. So we're going to leave it like that. Let's just search up a random article here. Sure, CTV. Nope, didn't work. Let's go to this one. We'll just do this. See, this even is obviously AI generated, so this company's doing it. So let's just say in the morning time, we were having our coffee, we were scrolling through Facebook or X, and we found this article. We thought it was really cool. All we would do is just copy the URL up top. And then let's just update this, and we're going to use it. I'll just show you how this works. So I'm just going to say post this to my LinkedIn. I'm just going to give it the URL. Now watch what it does. You can see it says starting action. It's going to ask you for permission. I'm going to click allow. And it says the article was successfully posted to your LinkedIn. So let's go check it out. If I go to my LinkedIn, you can see, excited to share this innovative new project in Vancouver, Elm 41 by iFortune Homes and Landa Global Properties. New vision for Vancouver, and then if we click on it, it leads to here. So it's super, super easy to just fill your LinkedIn feed with interesting articles. You can also, just make regular posts or a video or whatever, but just makes it super, super easy to do that. All you would have to do if you wanted to make it like Instagram instead of LinkedIn, let's say, is you could just change this module in here to an Instagram module or a Facebook module, right? Like, let's see if we go to Facebook. Actually, let's go to Facebook pages. You can see we have create a post with photos, upload a video, number of different options. Let's see what they have for Instagram. You can create a photo post, a reel post, a carousel post, tons of different options. You get the point. You just sub out what you need to in Make.com. That's why I love Make.com. It's super easy to understand. It's just individual modules that each do something and one leads to another, right? Maybe you wouldn't need this OpenAI module if you're posting your own photo. So in ChatGPT, I could just attach a photo and say, post this to my Instagram, and it would transfer that photo over, create a caption for it, blah, 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 then post it to my Instagram. So you can do it however you like, swap out these modules with whatever you need. So that shows you there how to do the social media posting. Let's change this to red because that one is done. Next one we have access your CRM. Now obviously for confidentiality reasons, I'm not going to be showing you my real CRM because that has client data inside of it. So instead what I did is I just created a Excel spreadsheet with some fake client information just so you can see how it would work. So we have the name, we have their email, their phone number, addresses, the client type, the status of them, if they need to be followed up on, whatever it is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back here. Guess what we're going to be doing? We're going to be creating a webhook, creating a new bucket, doing all the same stuff that we just did. So go create a new scenario in Make.com for the CRM one, create a new webhook, add that webhook by creating a new bucket, add it into there, copy this, go to your GPT Action schema creator, create a new action schema, and then come back, and when you're ready, we will start again. All right, so just to recap here, if you're at this point in the video, you should have created a new scenario on Make.com. You should have also created a new bucket in Webhook Relay, and you should have added the Make.com webhook to that bucket. Then you should have taken that bucket endpoint. Let me go to my CRM one. You should have taken this bucket endpoint, put it into the ChatGPT Action Schema Creator, created a new schema. And when it's asking you for all the parameters, I know we haven't gone over it yet, so don't worry if you missed one or if you're saying the wrong things. It's fine, because you can always go back into this chat and say, I want to edit it, or I want to add a parameter or whatever, and it's going to instantly generate it for you. So it's not a big deal if you make a mistake or if you miss something or you want to add something at a later date. It's really not a big deal. You just get it to generate you a new one instantly. Copy and paste that into your GPT action, and that's it. So if you've done all that already, then perfect, you're up to speed. We're going to create a new action. We're going to paste that in. This is the schema that we just created. Then we're going to go back. Then we're going to go into our instructions. We're going to create a new line for the CRM one. We're going to say call that API. This will return their name, email, phone number, property address, and deal status. You can swap these out for whatever stuff you want to pull out of your specific CRM. To perform this function, you need to ask the client's first and last name. This will be your client name parameter. So when we created our schema, we told it that we need one parameter, which is the client name parameter. Now we're telling ChatGPT what that client name parameter consists of. It consists of the client's first and last name. So we got the action hooked up. We got the instructions made up. Now remember, we also have another spot where we need to paste this, right? At the top for the email one, we told it you can get the email by searching our CRM by using the, we're just going to do that and put an API. Great. So everything's set up there. Now we want to make sure that our Make.com scenario is set up. So here's what we're going to do. You have your webhook created already. That is then going to go to your CRM module. Now, obviously, for my specific case, it's a Google Sheets file. But for you, it would be whatever, Follow-Up Boss module, Pipedrive, whatever CRM that you're using, you would use that module. If Make.com does not have a module, you would use a arbitrary API call using that HTTP module. And basically all you have to do is follow the documentation of whatever CRM you're using in order to use the function that has something to do with searching your contacts or finding a contact or something like that. So for example, for the Google Sheets one that I'm using, all we're doing is we're searching the name column for the client name variable that gets passed through here. You can see when I hover over it, this starts to like pulse. That just shows you where this information is coming from, right? So for your CRM one, you'd probably, depending on the API, would maybe put in a filter or a parameter that would say name is equal to, and then that name. Again, every API, every software tool is a bit different in how they do it, but pretty much every CRM, if they have an open API for you to use, they will have a way for you to search your contacts. That's the most basic functionality that there is. So the name comes in through the webhook. It gets passed to your CRM where it says look for this name, and then it will find that name. In this case, Google is finding that row of that person's name, and we're sending back information with a webhook response. Now this one is a little bit different, right? Because we're doing a 200 status code just like normal, but now we're putting in information to send back to ChatGPT. So how do we do that? Well, we do that with what's called JSON code. If you don't know how to do it, again, ChatGPT is your best friend. You just ask it to write JSON code for you. It's spelled JSON code, JSON code, or just JSON for short. But basically, it's just a way to structure key value pairs. So a key value pair meaning you have a key, like a title of something, and you have the value of it. You have the key, you have the value of it. You have the key, you have the value, so on. So for this case, we're passing the person's name. I just named a client name. We're passing their email, we're passing their phone number, we're passing the address, we're passing their status. You can put whatever information is most important to you. You can name it whatever you want to name it. The important thing is, well, first off, the important thing is all this stuff is in quotations because that's how JSON works. You need to have it in quotations or it won't go through. And then the value part of it that you're assigning to this key has to be correlating with whatever your CRM came up with. So for example, when I searched for a specific name, my CRM, in this case my Google Sheets, found all this data on that person, right? So the name is going to equal their name. Email is going to equal their email. And now you can see on the side here, it shows the information that is within that box. So like the name box holds this value of Taylor Davis. The email, and this will change every time you're searching for a new person, but it just gives you a preview of what is inside this box, and then you're going to click that box in order to assign it to this. You don't want it to say client name is Taylor Davis, because now every single time that you run the scenario, it's going to say Taylor Davis. This is why we use variables, because these variables change every time that you're running a different scenario, right? So basically all you're telling it is client name is equal to whatever value happens to be inside this name box. Their email is equal to whatever value happens to be inside this email. In this case, the value is this, but that's going to change every time you do a new request, right? So we're sending all this information back to ChatGPT. So now, if we go back to our GPT, we've set in our instructions, good to go. We're going to update that just to save it. And now we're going to try testing it. So let's just say that I was out and about and I couldn't quite remember the address of my client's listing. So I'm just going to say, what's the address of Brandon Hernandez's house? Now it says it wants to call that endpoint. Great, we're going to allow. The address is 1234 Main Street. Great. Let's just go see if that matches. We're going to scroll down to Brandon Hernandez. His address is 1234 Main Street. Perfect. So see, it searched through my CRM. It found the address, and then it just tells me, because all that information, see it says response received. That was it receiving all the information, the phone number, the email, the address, all that. But ChatGPT also knows that I only asked for the address. So it's not going to give me all the info that it just received. It's only going to give me the thing that I asked for. If I say, thank you, what's their phone number? Then it's just going to give me it because it has it right away, right? So super, super cool. That shows you how to access your CRM. Obviously, it's going to be a bit more technical when you're actually using your CRM's module here rather than a Google Sheets one. But I didn't want to disrupt any privacy laws with my clients' information by accidentally giving any of that out or anything like that. So I just used a Google Sheets row there. If you do have any specific questions on how you can hook up something like that, just shoot me an email, brandon@agentautomation.ca, and I'm more than happy to help you get that set up. And like I said, if you are not technical, you don't know how to do any of this, or you don't want to do any of this, I have solutions for you at the end. We also provide a service doing this for real estate agents. So we will set up all of these actions and your entire GPT, your entire make scenarios, and your webhooks. We set it all up for you as a done for you service. So you don't have to worry about doing any of that. So we're going to hop in back into here. Step 3, accessing your CRM. That is all finished. So we retrieve data. We can make updates if we need to, right? If you want to make a change to your CRM, all you would do is you would switch this module to a module that updates the CRM rather than pulls information from your CRM. I'll just show you an example here. Maybe that'll make it a little bit easier to understand. If I go to Follow Up Boss, what do we got here? We can get a contact. So that's what you would use if you're using Follow Up Boss. You would get a contact. You can update a contact. So if you want to make a change, you can delete one if you want. You can search through your contacts, which you might actually need for get a contact, because if you look, it says retrieves a contact's details specified by ID. So that means you need the contact ID. Well, how do you get that? You're going to have to search through your contacts first. So you would search your contacts based on the name the ChatGPT provided. That would result in a bunch of information on that person. You would take then their ID and you would put it into get a contact, which would give you additional information. So that part's covered. Now we're going to move on to the last step, which is creating a calendar event. So this one I actually have not yet done in Make.com, so we're going to be able to make it together. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So first things first, create a new scenario, create a new webhook, custom webhook. I'm going to add, let's call it calendar tester. Sorry, I got terrible hiccups today. Okay, we're going to copy that. Going to go to our buckets. Did I create one? Yes, I created one already. Perfect. We're just going to swap this out because I just created a new webhook anyways. Swap that out. We're going to save that. We're going to make sure that our output, right, click calendar test, or our input, sorry. Go to response configuration. This should say any output. Perfect. Now we're going to go and copy that. Then we go to our action schema creator. We're going to say, I want to make a new schema. So if you're doing something new and you don't know what parameters you're going to need, the best way to figure that out is we're going to go back to Make.com. And let's just exit out of this webhook for 1 sec. I'm going to name this before I forget. And we're going to add the module in for the specific action that we're trying to perform, right? So I want to update my Gmail calendar or my Google Calendar. So I'm just going to search Google, and Google Calendars right there. Then we're going to look at what we want to do here. We want to create an event, right? Because we're creating an event in our calendar. We're going to click that. We're going to connect our Google Calendar. And then we're going to look at just what is required here in the actual module, right? So calendar ID is required, but that's just a drop down. So when you drop this down, it's going to ask you what calendar. I'm going to do my main one. This is, by the way, this is my real estate email address, not the one that I use for AI and automations. So if you're going to ask questions about how to do stuff in Make.com, don't email this email. This is the one I use as a realtor. The next thing that is required, you can see this red star here, that means it's required. So the next thing that's required is the event name. Okay, so that's the first parameter that we need. So let's go back here and we're going to say the name of the first one is event name. The description, name of the calendar event. Next one, let's go look. Next thing that we're going to need is a start date. So we're going to get that. Now you can also see that end date is not required, so you don't have to put in an end date. But I would assume if you're putting a bunch of stuff into your calendar, you probably want to set an end date and an end time so that it's not going to fill up your entire calendar, or it's not going to be a 15-minute event when it's supposed to be an hour and a half, right? So we got to keep that in mind as well. Even though it's not required, we're going to need a start date and an end date. Now, what do we put in here? Like, do we just put January 1st, 2025? Do we put 01/01/2025? Like, what exactly do we put? Well, you can see there's some notes down here. So the time zone is America, Toronto. Okay, so whatever time we want to put into this calendar has to be put in as America, Toronto time. And then also supported date formats are here. So if we click that, it's going to take us to this little page from Makecom that'll give you a bit of information as to, how you can put in dates and things like that. But what you can also do, just to show yourself, is when you click into it, if you look up here, there's a little calendar icon. Click on that, and then let's just say a random day. You'll see how it shows up here. Okay? So just take note of that as to how this format is, because we're going to put that in the instructions of ChatGPT when we say to it, put the start date in this format, put the end date in this format. Now I'm going to show you that in just one sec, but we're going to go back to the GPT creator here, and it's going to be start date and end date that we still need to add in. So this is going to be start date. The description is going to be the start date and time of the event. Time is very important, obviously, because you're going to be telling it to create an event in your calendar for this day at this time. So you got to put in the time. And then the next one is end date. Which is going to be the end date and time of the event. Now we send that off. Now it's going to create it. Remember to wait until it's fully finished before you copy, because if you copy now, it'll just copy what it's written so far, not what's left to write. So just make sure you wait till it finishes. So we're going to copy that. We're going to go into our ChatGPT. We're going to create a new action. Paste that in. Scroll down to see if there's any error message. Yes, there is. Switch that to 3.1.0. And then we're just going to take note of this. It's called add event is the available action. Because then when we go back to our instructions, we're going to do a new instructions here. So to create an event in my calendar, we're going to call the that API and use the add event operation to perform this action. You will need to know the event name, which I'm going to say you will create based on the information I give you. You know what, actually I'm going to say you may have to create, because maybe sometimes I'll want a specific title, maybe sometimes I won't. Then we're going to say the start date / time. This should be written as, this is where we're going to put the format. So the way that we write it is we're going to say year, month, day, hour, minute, AM, PM. Okay? So what the heck does that mean? We're going to say should be written as year, which is YYYY, meaning the year in 4 numbers, dash, month, MM, dash, day, DD, space, hour, colon, minute. It's important that these are in capital letters or else it's going to think you're referring to month. So hour, minute, and then AM or PM. So we have year, month, day, hour, minute, AM, PM. Make sure that matches. Year, month, day, hour, minute, AM, PM. Perfect. Then we're going to do the end date as well, just to speed up. I'm going to copy and paste that and switch it with the end date time. And that's it. We're going to update that. Now also, one thing I forgot to mention earlier when you're testing is you have to turn it on when you go to test it. If this is not turned on, nothing's going to happen to your webhook. So if I go to try and turn it on right now, you can't, because the values of these are empty. What does that mean? Well, it means that these values need to be filled out in order for you to turn the scenario on, because right now nothing would happen. So we're going to select, again, our calendar ID just because it deleted everything. The event name, well, we don't have an event name, right? We don't have a start date. We don't have, because no data has been passed through here. So what do? Well, let's exit out of this. What we can do is we can go to our webhook module, we can right click and click run this module only. So that means it's not going to run the entire scenario, it's only going to run this one module so that we can send some data into it, and that way we can pick it up on the other end. So we're going to click run this module only. You can see it's spinning, showing that it's running. Now we're going to test that function. I'm going to say add a showing to my calendar for 1234 Main Street tomorrow at 5 p.m. Actually, before we test this, there's something I realized, which is we didn't take into account that the time zone that Make.com runs on is America, Toronto. So we have to go back into our instructions here. Let's go to my GPTs. Let's edit this. And we're going to add in some context here. So I'm going to say it's important to remember that any date and time you pass through the action will need to be in America/Toronto time. I'm giving you my date and times in Mountain time, so you'll need to do the conversion. Okay, so now let's update that. View GPT. Let's go back here. We're going to run this module only. Go back and we're going to say add a showing to my calendar for tomorrow at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Okay, so it's saying I will need to know the property address for the showing, and is there a specific client associated with the showing? So it's actually gone above and beyond to ask additional information, which is super cool. The showing is going to be 1234 Main Street, and the client is John Doe. Now we just have to click allow. So for every action that you're trying to get ChatGPT to do, you always have to approve it. You always have to say allow. So now it says it was added to my calendar. Obviously, it was not actually added to my calendar because I haven't set that up in Make.com. But what it did do is it passed me some information that I can then use in my calendar. So let's go to it. Now select the calendar. See, anytime if you don't put in the required information and you exit out of this, it deletes everything. So if you want it to save, you always got to put in, you can even just put in a placeholder, click OK, and then when you come back, it'll be saved. If not, you'll just have to reconnect your stuff. Not a huge deal, but whatever. So the event name, you can see now we have data that's been passed through the webhook that we can select. So the the event name is now event name. Start date is going to be start date. End date is the end date. Great, done. Now we're going to click save. Now it should save, perfect. Now we're going to turn it on. So this little switch here, switch that on. Yes, we want it to run immediately. And now let's test it again. I'm just going to use the exact same scenario. Property address and client name, 1234 Main Street. Oops. Maybe my mouse is dying. Main Street, and the address or the person's name is Brandon Hernandez. Allow. See, now in the instructions, we could also put, you don't need to tell me what the converted date and time is, so that way it would only be 5 to 6 p.m. You don't get confused when you're approving it. The instructions tell ChatGPT everything. So if you don't like a way that it's responding or you don't like a certain thing it's saying, you just say that to it and it'll fix it. Now you'll notice it didn't ask for permission. That's because we're in the exact same thread, the same conversation as when we already gave it permission. If we were to have created a new chat, then we would have needed to. Now it's going to say that it has done everything, it's hooked everything up. So let's go check. In my calendar here, and look at that, showing with Brandon Hernandez at 1234 Main Street. So it created the calendar date for me. Awesome. And now obviously you can continue to add actions if you want to also create a delete event one and an update event and whatever. So you can just keep talking to it back and forth, getting it to do different things. Now, how do you do a bit of troubleshooting to see, maybe you're setting this up and for whatever reason you can't access your calendar or something like that. How do you know if it actually went through? Or if it didn't go through, how do you know what the issue was? Well, let's just save that. We're going to go back and I'm going to show you how to kind of look into a specific scenario. So let's pick one that has multiple modules. Let's pick the LinkedIn one. We're going to click on it. And then here, or in the history tab, but right here, you're going to see all the different runs that it had. You're going to see when you edited it. You're going to see when you turned it on, things like that, if there was an error at all. So if ChatGPT says, yep, created the LinkedIn post for you, you're good to go. But then you go here and you see that the most recent one has an error, well, then you know that there was an issue, right? So then you can click on it, any one of these, and you can see these little ones up here. These little white bubbles show when data has been transferred from one module to another, and it'll show you what data. So if you click on the bubble, or even if you click on the side here where it shows all the different steps, then you're going to see the output of what came out. So the content of the article that we were posting, the URL, the title. Then you can go to this one and you can see, okay, these are the variables that it's set. And you're going to see on a lot of them input and output. So input is the information that was sent to it, and then output is the information that it created. So like for this ChatGPT one, the input that we gave it was generate a thumbnail image for this LinkedIn article, the title and the URL. The output was, it just says data, because this is what the image looks like before you actually use it. So the next one, HTTP module, I mean, it's not going to show you much other than just the data of the image. LinkedIn, if you look at it, the output was it created a post, gives you the post ID, so on and so forth. But let's go back to when there was an error. Click on the details of that one. Obviously, there's only one module here, but if you click on it, it'll tell you what the error was. This is a 400 error, so it's just like a troubleshooting code. Your request was rejected as a result of our safety system. Your prompt may only contain text that is not allowed by our safety system. So that just means whatever. There was something random in there that it didn't accept. But what I'm trying to say is if you have to troubleshoot, you can go into your history, you can see all the different runs that happened, and then you can see the breakdown as it goes from module to module, what happened and what went wrong, so you can kind of troubleshoot and fix errors from there. So that's it. We're going to mark this one off as read, and that is all for you. So we've shown you how to send emails, or how to get ChatGPT to send emails for you on your behalf. But remember, even though it's a custom GPT that you're creating, it can still do all the things that ChatGPT can do, right? It can still generate you a marketing report or a listing description, or a list of ideas or a content calendar or whatever. You can still do all that, but you also add in these actions and these functionalities, like posting to your social media for you, accessing your CRM, updating your calendar, things like that. And you can just keep adding from there, right? Like go to Make.com and just play around with it. Start a random scenario and look through all the different modules that they have. Think about what software tools are you using in your day-to-day business. Can you connect it? How could you automate a certain process? Who are you emailing? Who are you talking to? Do you have group chats? Do you have, different things that you could automate the entire task and just get ChatGPT to do it for you? Might save you half an hour a day, an hour a day, 2-3 hours a day. It adds up over time, right? Even a half an hour a day, which this should save you more than that, but let's just say it's half an hour a day. It's 3.5 hours a week, right? Like that's, what is that, 14 hours a month? It's a lot of time. That's like 2 extra working days for most people that you're going to get ahead of your competition. So it makes a big, big difference once you're automating all of these tasks that seem like they're little things, these little jobs. But I mean, those little things are usually what you end up hiring an assistant for anyways, right? So if you don't have an assistant right now, and maybe you're looking to hire one, this might be a solution for you. You can turn your ChatGPT into your own assistant. Now, you've probably seen videos online, maybe it's one of my YouTube videos, showing you how to do something like create a content calendar inside of ChatGPT so that it plans out all your Instagram posts for you. Well, imagine creating a content calendar inside of your custom GPT and then saying, great, now go follow that calendar. And now it's going to create the calendar, or create the post for each day, create the caption, create everything. That's only going to work obviously if you want generated images, but you get the point. I mean, you can make it so powerful. You could say, hey, give me a list of 7 different articles that pertain to real estate news in my city. Then it gives you the list with the URLs, and then you say, great, now I want you to post one of those to my LinkedIn every single day this week, and you create the title and the content and all that for it. Now it's automated. Now you have an entire week of LinkedIn posting done for you, and you don't have to worry about it, right? So the more that you get some experience with platforms like Make.com Or if you want to use Zapier, you can do that too. It works the same, but I think Make.com is easier and honestly more powerful. But the more that you get experience with these tools, the more useful it's going to be. Now, are we done here? Not quite. So we're done doing all of our actions, at least for this example of this video. But what else do we need to do? So we've put in instructions for how to use each action, right? But we still want to give it some context about us, about our business, and things like that. So we're going to say, Brandon is a real estate agent in Edmonton, Alberta, and helps buyers and sellers with their real estate needs. Brandon has been in real estate for 10 years and works for a brokerage called Real Broker. That way it just has a little bit of context so that if you ask it to send an onboarding email, let's say, it's going to know what to put in that email. Maybe it's going to put an introduction about you, how you've been in real estate for 10 years, how you're with Real Broker, blah, blah, blah. So the more context you can give it about the real estate agent that it's working for, the better the responses are going to be because they'll be more specific to you and your business. Last thing we're going to put is all right, so I'm going to say your knowledge base contains PDF documents showing the most recent sales data in your city. You should always refer to this when creating anything that relates to real estate sales data. There's also a document showing more information about Brandon's brokerage. So let's just add that stuff in here. Now, before I forget, I'm just going to make sure that all this stuff set properly. Remove the canvas, put on the code, interpreter, and data analysis. And then we are going to upload files to our knowledge base. So I added in some sales stats that my real estate board sends me. Just some different ones with different performance indicators. I also added a document about my company, which normally this would be about my real estate company, not my automation one. But just for the sake of this video, we're just putting that in. Then we got all that in there. The last thing that we want to make sure that we do is this very bottom additional settings. It says use conversation data in your GPT to improve our models. What that means is the conversations that happen within our own custom GPT, ChatGPT is going to still save that in their own database to help train and improve their AI, right? Because that's how ChatGPT gets better and better and better, is the more people that talk to it, the more it kind of learns and trains on how to have proper conversations. But we do not want that checked because you might at some point be using confidential client data, right? If you're accessing your CRM, you might be using their phone number or their email or whatever, and you don't want that information getting sent to ChatGPT. So you're going to unclick that, and that is super, super, super important, okay? So make sure that's clicked. Then we're just going to click update. And that's it. We're all done. You've now created your own custom GPT. So I'm just going to show you an example. So I'm going to say email a quick market update to Brandon Hernandez to update him on any price changes. Use the data from your knowledge base. So a few things going on here, right? We're asking it to send an email. We're asking it to look through our CRM so we can get Brandon Hernandez's email address. We're asking it to create the email itself. And we're also asking it to use the data from our knowledge base to create an accurate email. So let's see what happens when we send that. So it's showing us a preview here, but it's showing us the preview in HTML like we talked about before. So that means that we just need to tweak the instructions a bit so that it's not showing us the preview in HTML. Unless you're fine with it, then you're fine with it. Now the next thing is it's not using actual data, right? It's using just X's, and it wants you to fill in the blanks. We don't want that. We want it to fill in these numbers here. So for right now, we're just going to tell it to do that stuff. But the more that you talk to it, the more that you correct it, the more that, every single time you ask for something like this, you're telling it, no, you fill in the blanks with your data, you fill in the blanks, the more that it learns. So these GPTs actually learn the more that you're using it. So right off the bat, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but the more that you talk to it, the better it's going to get. So we're going to say, so you've probably heard the term training AI or training your GPT. That's what we're doing here. So we're running scenarios, asking it to do certain things. And then when it doesn't do exactly what we want it to do, we're correcting it. We're telling it what it should be doing. That's training the AI. So now you can see it filled in the blanks. Average residential price, detached homes, townhouses, condos, blah, blah, blah. And it showed it to us in plain text. Perfect. Then it's going to say, let me know if you'd like any adjustments or additional details. Good to go. Now, the other thing about ChatGPT or custom GPTs is they are eager to learn. What that means is sometimes, every now and then, you're going to get something like this, where it's going to show you two different responses. That's because it's going to write them differently. It's going to write these emails differently, and you can pick which one you prefer. And that helps it train it even more so that it knows for next time what type of emails you like to see. So I'm just going to click one of them, click allow. And then it says it's been successfully sent. Let's see if I got the email. Yep, there it is. So you can see, dear Brandon, I hope this message finds you well. Here's a quick update on the latest market trends in Edmonton in November 2024. And then it sends it there. Overall, it's been a slight decrease, blah, blah, blah. So you can just imagine if you took the time, a day or two to create this, set it up, and train it and work with it so that when it writes market updates like this, it's writing it in the way that you want it to, or even maybe you use something fancier like MailChimp and you have, a specific template. Then in Make.com, you just put your MailChimp template, and then when you ask it to send a market update, it knows to trigger that workflow that has the the MailChimp scenario in it, and then it sends it based off of that. So the possibilities with this are so endless. I mean, basically anything that you're doing inside of your real estate business that doesn't require you to physically be there can almost be automated with ChatGPT. I'm not going to say you should do everything, but the possibilities are quite endless. It's pretty crazy. So that's it for the free training. I really hope that you got some value out of this. If it was a bit too technical, then I apologize. But like I said, I do have some solutions for you. So first off, if you are not a technical person, if this is not something that you're trying to do yourself and learn how to use Make.com and ChatGPT and a little bit of extra coding and all this extra stuff that is kind of required to set all this up, my company, Agent Automation, does this for real estate agents every single day. So we go into your ChatGPT account, we create the whole GPT for you, we put in all the specific actions that you're wanting it to perform, we set up Make.com for you. It's a completely done for you service, so you don't have to do a thing. And it's super cheap. The price starts at $495, which if you compare that to an assistant that you're paying $40,000 or $50,000 a year for, I mean, $500 versus $40,000, it's a pretty big difference, I would say. So if that's something that you're interested in, click the button right below here. You'll be able to book a call with me or my team, and we can answer all your questions for you. We can talk about, what the whole process looks like and get you started on that. If you're like, no, you know what, I really want to take this on myself, I want to learn how to do this, that's awesome. There's a few resources you can use. If you want to learn Make.com, they actually have their own academy on their website that you can go through. It does take a few hours for the beginner level, and then they have advanced and intermediate. I highly recommend doing all of them if learning how to automate different parts of your business is of interest to you, even outside of ChatGPT. Their academy is really, really good. It makes you understand the platform really well. So you can go there, you can do their academy totally for free, and you can learn the platform there. YouTube obviously is a super amazing resource as well. There is so much information out there for how to use Make.com and how to get some JSON script and different things that you need to get this whole process working. Yeah, even if you go on Make.com's community, like their forum, you can ask questions and usually within a day or two it's going to get answered for you. So there's a lot of resources out there. But like I said, I totally get it. You're a real estate agent, you probably don't have time to learn all this stuff, to learn how to automate and code and Make.com and Zapier or whatever it is. So that's why we're here. The entire reason behind me starting my company, Agent Automation, was to help real estate agents integrate AI into their business to make their business run better, more efficiently, increase their productivity, increase their profits, and just have more fun in their business. Because let's face it, everybody's got things in their business that they hate doing, whether it's replying to emails or posting on social media. It's those things that when it comes up on your calendar, you roll your eyes because you don't want to have to do it. Well, now you have a way that you can automate that with ChatGPT and get it to do the stuff that you don't want to do. So if you got this far in the training, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you got a ton of value from it, or at least got a few ideas cooking in your brain of how you can use AI in your business. If this is something that you're interested in, click the button below, book a time on my calendar, and let's get started right away. And once again, thank you so much for sticking around this whole time. I hope it wasn't too boring. But yeah, I hope to hop on a call with you and talk more about your business and how you can use AI to automate stuff.